to 22, then verse 1 of chapter 9, and then verses 8 to 17. If you'd like to follow along, or if you just want to sit and listen as I read. But God remembered Noah and all the beasts and all the livestock that were with him in the ark. And God made a wind blow over the earth, and the waters subsided. Verse 14, in the second month, on the 27th day of the month, the earth had dried out. Then God said to Noah, "Go out from the ark, you and your wife and your sons wives with you. Bring out with you every living thing that is with you of all flesh, birds and animals, and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth, that they may swarm on the earth, and be fruitful and multiply on the earth." So Noah went out, and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him. Every beast, every creeping thing, and every bird, everything that moves on the earth, went out by families from the ark. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord, and took some of every clean animal and some of every clean bird, and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And when God smelled the pleasing aroma, the Lord said in his heart, "I will never again curse the ground because of man, for the intention of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I ever strike down every living creature as I have done. While the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease." And God blessed Noah, verse 1 of chapter 9. And God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth." Verse 8, then God said to Noah and his sons with him, "Behold, I establish my covenant with you and your offspring after you. And every living creature that is with you, the birds, the livestock, and every beast of the earth with you, as many as came out of the ark, it is for every beast of the earth. I establish my covenant with you, that never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of the flood, and never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth." And God said, "This is the sign of the covenant that I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for all future generations. I have set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. When I bring clouds over the earth and the bow is seen in the clouds, I will remember my covenant that is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. And the waters shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh. When the bow is in the clouds, I will see it and remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is on the earth." God said to Noah, "This is the sign of the covenant that I have established between me and all flesh that is on the earth." Amen. True commitment is hard to find. Don't you have to question a footballer's commitment who kisses the team badge and says he loves the club, and then the next thing you know, he's off to Barcelona? Well, not exactly the next thing you know. I know it's been going on for a while, but adios, Cesc. Hurts. In football today, they say a contract, an allegedly binding commitment, isn't worth the paper that it's written on. But it's not just in football. Look at the way society treats marriage today. A binding covenant commitment, yet it's so easily reversed, so quickly disposed of. True commitment is hard to find. But here's a question for us this evening. What about God's commitment? After the shocking events of chapter 6 and 7, it may have seemed that God's commitment to creation wasn't worth the paper it was written on, back in Genesis 1 and 2. It seemed to be so easily reversed or rewound, as we noted last time, disposed of. It was no time since God had said that all was very good, and yet now he seems to be saying that all is very bad. And yes, it was a shocking judgment. But let's be very clear. It was as a direct consequence of the shocking sin of humanity. But as we finished with last time, the most shocking of all in those chapters 6 and 7 is God's shocking grace. His shocking grace to Noah, and covenant commitment to Noah, then saving Noah when the judgment fell. But what about God's commitment now? Now that the rains stopped. Many times have you said that this week. What will we do now that the rains stopped? And it stopped this evening, and hopefully stays like that. But what about God's commitment now that the rain stopped? Is God's commitment true commitment? I want you to notice just three simple things from the story this evening. Firstly, God is still committed to his people. God is still committed to his people. Chapter 8 begins, but God remembered Noah. But God remembered Noah. Just like God had remembered Abraham in Genesis 19 in the midst of the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. Just like God remembered his covenant commitment to his people there in Exodus 2 in the midst of Egyptian oppression, God remembered Noah. You say, had God forgotten Noah? No, it's not that God had forgotten Noah. Instead, it's a statement of committed intent. God's saying, I'm still committed to my people, and in active remembrance and faithfulness to my covenant commitment, I'm going to act for their good. I'm going to act on their behalf. God has already affirmed his covenant commitment to Noah, and now he's faithfully following through on that. God remembered Noah. It's wonderful. God is still committed to his people. If you're a Christian this evening, be assured, be reassured and encouraged. God's covenant commitment still holds good. God is faithful even in the darkest day. God remembers you. It's not that he's ever forgotten you, but be encouraged. God is always acting, always working, even as Andrew was singing to us this evening, that wonderful song. He's working for your good and his glory. There's no contradiction. Your good and his glory in faithful covenant commitment. That's true commitment. God is still committed to his people. God remembered Noah. And it wasn't long before Noah would be back on dry land again, thanking God for all of his goodness to him. But not only is God committed to his people, still committed to his people, we see also here that God is still committed to his place, to his creation. God is still committed to his place. Anybody remember tape recorders? One or two people. Remember if it was playing and you went to rewind, instead of pressing stop, you just pressed rewind, and it would make that funny sound like, I was thinking, what's it like? It's like panicking Smurfs. I know the Smurfs are very topical at the moment, but it would kind of go, is that like a Smurf? No. Okay, sorry. It would make that sound, rewinding, okay? Chapter 6 and 7 that we looked at last time, it's as if God has pressed rewind on creation. Without stopping everything, he rewinds. The waters above and below come together. The dry land disappears. All is dark as the rain starts to fall. The breath that was breathed in has for the most part been snuffed out. It's a rewinding decreation, chapter 6 and 7. But here in chapter 8, God shows that he is still committed to his place. He's pressing forward wind. Again, the wind blows over the waters. It's that spirit word from Genesis 1. Again, the waters are separated above and below. Again, the dry land appears. Again, every living thing is introduced to God's place. It's like a forward winding recreation, like excited Smurfs. Maybe as that sound would go, and I'll not do that one. To prove that God is truly committed to his place, God makes a covenant concerning creation, a true commitment never again to destroy the world by a flood. Instead, chapter 8, verse 22, while the earth remains, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease. God is still committed to his place. It's a true commitment. And as a sign of God's true commitment to his place, he puts a rainbow in the sky. If you think about it, just like I've got a band of gold on my finger to remind me of my covenant commitment in marriage to Andrea, so God put a bow in the sky to remind him of his covenant commitment to his creation. So the rainbow isn't so much to remind us of God's true commitment. Actually, it's to remind God, for God to be reminded himself of his commitment. And that's what he says, verse 15 of chapter 9. So, True commitment. God is truly committed to his people. God is truly committed to his place. So we might ask, what's the plan? What next? Well, notice finally, God is still committed to his plan. Listen to the similarity between God's instructions to Noah and his previous instructions to Adam. In Genesis 1, there God said to Adam, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth." Here, God says to Noah, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth." God restates his plan, his creation blueprint, that his image bearers will fill the earth, rightly ruling God's creation under God's rule, rightly reflecting God's glory, God's people in God's place under God's rule, glorifying God as they enjoy him and all of his infinite goodness. So is that the end of the story? Can we just do a really fast forward wind to the end? No, we can't. Because if you're listening closely in the passage, you'll notice that something has changed. Something big has changed since the blueprint was first outlined, since the plan was first revealed in Genesis 1 and 2. And what has changed? Genesis 3. Sin. The fall. Look at the evidence of that here. Things have changed. This is not God's final recreation. It's not God's perfect new creation. There's death here. There are instructions given concerning death. Things have changed. The intention of man's heart is still evil. Sin remains. It hasn't been fully and finally dealt with. The just wrath of God against sin has not been quenched. We say, so what's the plan? The plan is the one that began to be revealed almost immediately after the fall in Genesis 3. And here, in Genesis 7 and 8 and 9, there's another revealing step in that plan. You see, at the end of chapter 8, we notice that Noah builds an altar. We discover why there were extra clean animals and birds taken into the ark. He takes some of the surplus clean animals and some of the surplus clean birds. He sheds their blood and offers them to God in whole burnt offering. Yes, he's giving thanks to God. But he's not only giving thanks to God. If you picture it, there Noah stands between his family and God. He stands as a priest. He's not just a king, if you like, a little king, a mini king, who was to rightly rule under God's rule, but he stands as a priest to rightly represent his family to God, a priest king who offers a blood sacrifice, a whole burnt offering. And we read that it soothed God. Chapter 8, verse 21, the Lord smelt the pleasing, the soothing aroma. And God gives a renewed commitment, covenant commitment to bless. Don't you see where it's pointing us? Can't you make out the outline of what's to come, of who's to come? A perfect priest king, God's true priest, God's true king, who would one day stand between his people and God and make the perfectly acceptable, the wholly acceptable sacrifice, willingly offering his whole self on our behalf, taking all of our sin in his own body on the cross and being punished in our place. And his sacrifice would be the ultimately pleasing aroma, the ultimately satisfying and soothing aroma, forever quenching the just wrath of God that we deserve, so that one day the blueprint would be realized. In God's new creation, the blueprint would be fully and forever realized. God's redeemed people in God's redeemed place, forever ruling rightly under God's rule, forever rightly reflecting God's glory as we enjoy God and his infinite goodness forever. What a plan. what a God. God is truly committed to his people, to his place, and his plan that comes together in Jesus Christ. But I ask you this evening, are you one of his people? I have to ask that this evening. Are you? Have you turned from your sin and trusted in this priest king Jesus? Have you by faith received him and all that he has done for you, so that you can be assured of your place in his perfect place, to enjoy him and all that is good forever? Do it tonight if you haven't before. Amen.